When you file a lawsuit that involves a policyholder of a particular insurance company, there is a limit to what you can request from the insurance company. The policy limits are determined by the amount of insurance coverage purchased by the policyholder. That having been said, there are methods that Florida has adopted to attempt to provide remedies to victims who need to recover more than the policy limits from an insurance company. To do that, you have to file what's referred to as a civil remedy notice with the Department of Insurance Regulation. And there are very specific requirements that you must meet in filing the so-called CRN. You would need to have assistance of an attorney to file a CRN that would be enforceable, but it would, if enforceable by the court, give you the opportunity to collect more than the policy limits from an insurance company.
And after doing this for a combined 67 years, we know how to write these demands. And if the insurance company does not pay that demand within a timely limit, there is an opportunity at that point to get more than the insurance policy. In fact, just recently, 3 times in the last 6 months, we sent out a demand and the insurance company did not pay it. They said, we're not going to pay this, it's not enough, it's too much. And then we turned around and sued the insurance company. A new insurance rep took over the case and they said, gosh, this case is worth more than the policy limits. We're going to pay the policy limits and we're going to offer a little bit more money because we should have paid it on time months ago. So there is an opportunity on cases to do it. You just have to know what you're doing as an attorney to do it right. Whether an insurance company is going to pay policy limits on a claim depends on really a couple factors. Number one, how much the insurance policy is. But number two, and the bigger factor is, what are the damages and do they meet the policy limits? In many cases, when the policy limits are only $10,000, the insurance company may be tendering that policy because the damages, the injuries are worth at least $10,000. But let's say in a commercial case where there's $1 million policy and the person just has a minor injury, they're not going to tender the $1 million. We wish we could get that for our clients, but that's not the way it's going to happen. They're going to evaluate the case within the policy limits and pay the amount that's at their evaluation.
That having been said, if the injuries are significant and liability is clear, the insurance company actually has what the law refers to as a fiduciary duty, which is the highest level of fidelity and duty that the law requires for the insurance company to its policyholder to offer the policy limits to attempt to receive a release on behalf of the policyholders for the policy limits. So yes, an insurance company will pay the policy limits when they are warranted. The typical outcome of a case where the injuries are significant and liability is clear is completely insurance driven. So that if the available bodily injury liability insurance limits are not sufficient to compensate the victim, and if the victim has uninsured motorist coverage, then we make claims both against the at-fault party and obtain the bodily injury liability policy limits, and we file a separate uninsured motorist claim, what's referred to as an underinsured claim, and we attempt to get the policy limits from our client's own automobile insurer for the uninsured motorist benefits. But Florida has no caps. That is that if you were to go to a jury trial and a jury were to award you more than the policy limits, there is no cap on economic or non-economic damages in Florida.
It can be somewhat unlimited. In front of a jury, the jury can do whatever they want in terms of making an award. They don't know what the policy limits are. The juries never know what the policy limits are. So we can stand up in front of a jury and ask for millions of dollars on a very serious case, and they can award that type of money. Whether insurance is ever going to pay that much will be dependent on how much coverage there is and some other issues that we would take care of at the end of the case. But certainly, on some level, the amount of money that could be had from an auto accident case is unlimited, especially if you're at trial. How much insurance companies pay for a personal injury case is dependent on many factors. It's dependent on the liability involved in the case, meaning who's at fault in the case, what the injuries are to the individual, how much medical expenses the individual's incurred, how much they may have lost in lost wages, and how much pain and suffering they may have in the future. Those are all factors that go into how an evaluation is done on a personal injury case. David Beers and I evaluated those cases for over 40 years combined for the insurance companies. We know how to evaluate those cases. We know how insurance companies evaluate those cases.
Insurance companies have sophisticated software, computer software, which has risk analysis probabilities that drive the valuation that they usually make on a particular case. Any particular individual, one of our clients, victimized by the fault of another person who was negligent in causing the accident, and those types of situations, the insurance company puts in a pool among all the injured claims that have been made, and then they're using their data that they have culled over many, many years. They're putting it in their computer software programs, and they come up with a range of values, and that is what they usually offer to pay on personal injury cases. There are exceptions, and it's like a bell curve, so that at the one end of obviously is going to be your 10 to 15% of cases that are worth more because of the nature and the circumstances, and there might be 10 or 15% that are worth less. And then in the middle is the vast majority of the claims, and that's usually where they try to settle them.
The hard part is, in the general public, a lot of people think every case is settled for hundreds of thousands of dollars because you see billboards that say, I got this amount of money. Well, that isn't how it always works, because it is so dependent on the type of case, and more importantly, the type of coverage, because we've had catastrophic cases here, unfortunately, or even wrongful death cases where there was no coverage, or there was very limited coverage. And then you do an asset search on the person, you find out there's nothing I can get from this person other than the $25,000 or $35,000 in coverage, and that's the best we can do because that's all that's available. So insurance companies evaluate each case individually. They do have kind of a formula in a lot of cases, because a lot of cases are very similar, but they evaluate each case individually, and they'll look at your case individually. And more importantly, at Beers & Gordon, we've done it for so long. We've done it on this side for over 10 years, meaning the plaintiff side, the victim side, and we also did it on the other side, which is even as valuable or more valuable because we know how insurance companies think after working with them or for them for over 40 years combined.
When you buy your automobile insurance, Florida permits the insurance industry to sell the automobile liability insurance and also the uninsured motorist coverage with what are referred to as split limits. That means a certain amount of money per person, in other words, per one person's claim, for one person's claim, or per accident, in which case it can refer to multiple injured parties for the total amount of the insurance purchased. A common purchase of insurance, for example, bodily injury coverage in Florida, is what's referred to as 50-100. $50,000 for a person's injuries and $100,000 aggregate total for the number of claims.
And if it's just you or one other individual in the accident, that's a non-issue because it's $50,000 for you, and if you have another person in the vehicle, it'll be $50,000 for the other driver or other passenger potentially. So that's how that works. But there are scenarios where there's multiple people involved in an accident, where we'll have a vehicle hit our client's vehicle, our client will be pushed into another vehicle, maybe even into another vehicle. You have 5 or 6 people that are injured in an accident, a chain reaction accident, and there's only one insurance policy, and they say a 50-100 policy. Well, now we have to split up that $100,000 per accident amongst 6 different people if there's 6 different people involved in the accident. So one person can get as much as $50,000 in that scenario, but the most all 6 could get combined are $100,000. So what happens is, depending on the amount of injuries, the amount of damages, the amount of coverage, sometimes we actually go to what's called the global mediation. The global mediation is where we sit down with all the other attorneys, all the other parties, and the insurance company and try to work out who's going to get that piece of the pie based on who has the most serious injuries. So when you look at per person, that means per person for that coverage, and then the other side where it says 50-100, you see the 100, that means per accident or per occurrence.
Florida uses a very broad definition of pain and suffering for purposes of jury verdicts in personal injury cases. And this is one of the reasons why personal injury cases have to be evaluated by experienced trial attorneys, because only with that experience will the party, the client, receive the benefit of having the opportunity to evaluate how the accident impacted specifically to you as the client, as the injured person, as the victim. So what is done in Florida is that it's, again, using this very broad approach, not only can you recover in Florida for pain and suffering in a court case for personal injuries, but you can cover mental anguish, you can recover for what's referred to as loss of capacity for the enjoyment of life, things that you cannot do physically that you did previous to the accident, which gave you joy in life. This is compensable under the law. Florida also permits us to make recommendations as your trial attorneys to the jury as to what their award should be for pain and suffering.
We try to give the jury some kind of guidance when we're going in closing argument and say, this is what we recommend you award in pain and suffering. But it's always up to the jury. We've had juries award more than we've asked for. We've had juries award less than we asked for.
When in general, what we try to do is put the argument in the context of how the accident resulted in the alteration of your life. And by doing that, we hope to personalize you so that the jury will understand, and what we say resonates with the jury in making their award. We are permitted to make what's referred to in Florida as per diem arguments, and by that we mean, for example, we may say, well, you are aware that Dr. Smith required our client to take this medication. This medication costs $3 a day. Our client's only 30 years old, and we therefore are requesting, in addition to the cost of the medication, we're requesting an equal amount for pain and suffering for the remainder of our client's life. And those types of awards in Florida for pain and suffering based on per diem arguments, that is per day, a certain amount of money per day for what has happened to you, have been upheld by the courts.